Well, good afternoon and welcome to Miss Dawn's Justice. Today is quite different. I asked people to send questions about all the episodes we've done to date. This is Memorial Day weekend, and I thought we would go down memory lane and go back over everything we've talked about. And I knew there would be some questions. I have received some all along, and some were heavily anticipated by me. I expected certain subject matters to create more questions than others. So I won't delay the inevitable here. I do want to encourage everybody to be safe this weekend as you go into Memorial Day weekend. Pay attention to the traffic patterns and listen to the news so you'll know what to do, and stay safe. Now, today, I'm going to get right into the questions. As you know, we started with the family law module. We started with family law. We started off with child abuse and neglect, prenuptial agreements and common law marriage, paternity support and custody, legal separations, and divorce. And we received several questions, quite a few questions, as a matter of fact, about family law matters. With respect to the family law module, we did get questions about child abuse and neglect. Child abuse and neglect. Now remember, child abuse is not just physical abuse. It involves emotional, psychological abuse, which is a traumatic experience for children. Keep in mind, bullying is a form of abuse, and that sometimes bullies are not just other children. Sometimes it can come from adults. I think Ms. Gwen made reference to teachers bullying children in our segment in education. With respect to child abuse, several people ask, who has to report it and how do you report it? Well, do you have to have absolute proof that child abuse occurred? No. It can be just suspected abuse. Just suspected abuse. And remember, we told you it's better to err on the side of caution. Every jurisdiction has a hotline for reporting child abuse. And for some people, it's not optional. There are mandated reporters in jurisdictions. And remember, we told you, mandated reporters must report suspected abuse. Did you hear me? Suspected abuse. They don't have a choice. So let's not get angry with people when they do their jobs. And that would include people in the school system like athletic coaches, teachers, principals, and the like, school nurses. These people must report suspected child abuse. Okay? The other people who must report it would be child family services employees, agents, and their contractors. Any healthcare worker, that would include chiropractors, dentists, all people in the health profession, nurses, physicians of every stripe. So they have no choice. Please don't ask them, give you another chance. They can't do it. They're looking at losing their license for you. I don't think so. Okay, so just know they are mandated. And remember, we told you in certain jurisdictions, like in my home state, West Virginia, clergy are included. They're not here in the DMV, but they are in some jurisdictions. So you need to look, where do I live? Who's a mandated reporter? And make sure, if you fall in that category, don't think, should I? No, you must. Mandated means mandatory, okay? So make sure you report that child abuse, suspected child abuse, all right? We know that there are certain signs with children. Go back to that episode and look at that. We gave you the signs and symptoms of a child that may be experiencing abuse, all right? It could be right in the home. So teachers in particular spot those things. And during the pandemic, it became a little harder. We talked about that. Remember how it became a little harder for people in the school systems to ascertain whether a child's being abused at home, and it was happening. The pandemic brought out many, many unpleasant facts. So don't forget, there are mandated reporters, and child abuse did rise during the pandemic season that we had. And it's not over, it's just that the health emergency aspect is over. Okay, so child abuse and neglect. And remember, we talked about the concept of neglect, and that is where we fail to provide the things that sustain and nurture a child. This could be not feeding a child. You can be affluent and be a neglectful parent. You can be affluent and be neglectful. Yes, yes. We told you we experienced in the school system, both of us, Ms. Gwen and I, were school teachers, and we saw children from every economic level who perhaps were neglected and or abused. So, don't think of it as something that just happens in poor communities or certain sections of the city or the country. It's across the board. The other area that we talked about in family law, we did an episode on prenuptial agreements and common law marriage. Prenuptial agreements and common law marriage. Remember, we said prenuptial agreements, that's an agreement. It's a legal document. It's a contract between two parties anticipating marriage, okay? They're anticipating getting married. So what do? They come together and they make decisions about what should happen to their personal and separate assets should the marriage deteriorate and there be a separation and or divorce. So there were certain elements in the prenuptial agreement that were absolutely mandatory. One, right out the gate, full disclosure of your assets. Full disclosure of assets. Failure to provide full disclosure of the assets could void that agreement. It could be voidable or void, depending on what jurisdiction you're in and the seriousness of the failure to disclose. Now, we told you that each party in a prenuptial agreement has to be represented or should be represented by counsel, different counsel, not the same lawyer. Understand? Each person should have that. If you insist on going forward without a lawyer, you do so at your own peril. You do so at your own peril. Even if you know the other person's lawyer personally, don't do it. Get legal counsel. If somebody says, well, I can't afford it, you can't afford not to get legal counsel in that situation. The prenuptial agreement, remember, is a very valuable tool because it can be used to override the probate statutes in whatever jurisdiction you're in. And that means, you see, most of the time a spouse cannot be disinherited in most jurisdictions. You cannot leave a spouse out. You cannot do it. So a prenuptial agreement helps to do some things in terms of perhaps not leaving your spouse X, Y, or Z, and you put language into that agreement that says this prenuptial agreement shall supersede whatever probate law is in effect in whatever jurisdiction the agreement is created. And remember, that language also has to say this prenuptial agreement is created pursuant to the laws of or shall be decided under the laws of a certain jurisdiction. Okay? It could be you're coming from two different jurisdictions, or maybe you have more than one home. It could be that we're looking at a blended situation where each partner, each spouse, prospective spouse, has a pre-existing family or has been married before. So this means you have to be very careful Look at your assets. How do you want them to be dispersed should the marriage end in divorce? Remember, we said don't do it the night before the wedding. You have to do it in a reasonable time before you actually proceed to the marriage. And we used as an example the Mary Blige situation, Mary J. Blige. It was done fairly close to her wedding, and it was an outrageous set of circumstances, and she ended up paying very dearly for that. But thank goodness she's back on her feet, and I don't think he got what he thought he was going to get, but it was pretty devastating, and it was just the way it was done as well. So here was a famous person who didn't have that in place, and so people ask me, well, prenuptial agreements, and get rid of this notion. Remember, I said not for rich people, for smart people. Okay, for smart people. And remember now, the age for getting married now is a bit older, which means each person is probably coming into that marriage with, more significant assets than in times past, when people got married out of high school or right out of college. The average age for first marriage now is close to 30. Close to 30. So by that time, people could have accumulated property or certain assets, and that all needs to be taken into account. Okay? Now, did I ever get questions on common law marriage? Oh, yeah. Yes, Lord. Oh, boy. Where do I start? Common law marriage is a legitimate marriage in the District of Columbia. In the District of Columbia. Now, we're here in the DMV. They don't have it in the state of Maryland, and they don't have it in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But in the District of Columbia, we do have common law marriage. What is it? It is, remember what we told you, two people hold themselves out as married to the public. There's a holding out that we are married. All right, and now we have same-sex marriage. It could be a husband and husband, a wife and a wife, or a husband and a wife. Okay, so it's the holding out that is important. The holding out. You hold yourself out into the community that we are indeed married. We're married. So that's one aspect. And then you have the intent to be married. The intent to be married. Now, remember, I told you, and I was sort of laughing, but I'm going to be really serious today because I don't want you to think I'm joking about this. I know when I came to D.C., people talked about play mother and play brother and, all that playing. But be very careful about out there saying somebody is your spouse. You shouldn't play that way. Okay, so that's a serious matter. And now we told you that in most jurisdictions, the holding out period has to be for a number of years. And remember this, and this is what created the stir and the questions. In the District of Columbia, we do not have a statutory period for establishing common law marriage. There was a little rumor about 6 months, and you won't find it in the statute, folks. It could happen in a few days. And where the controversy comes in is when one of the partners dies, and there's maybe no will, or maybe there's a will, and some relatives of the deceased want to challenge whether there was a real marriage. And usually people don't challenge anything until somebody passes away. Well, okay. What happens then? The probate lawyer has to prove that indeed there was a common law marriage established, okay? And so that can be done by getting affidavits from neighbors and family members, church members, people like that in the community. Remember, holding yourselves out in the community as married. So you go to the community and you get affidavits. And remember, I told you that I had a colleague who used a veterinary bill that was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. So and so? Okay, things like that. Did they file taxes together? Now, there are plenty of people with a certificate marriage, one that took place via application and certificate and all of that. Plenty of people file separate tax returns, so that's not an end-all factor. It could help, but it's not that. And remember, children born within a common law marriage are considered legitimate if the marriage has been established legitimately. Now, this is the part that got a number of people really concerned, and I said, common law marriage is not shacking, okay? It is not shacking, okay? And remember, in a common law marriage, each person, each potential spouse has to be free to marry. You don't leave your wife of so many years or husband of so many years and not get a divorce. Say, I'm going over here and be common law to somebody else. You can't do it. That's an impediment if you're still married to somebody. Okay? How does one get out of a common law marriage? Now, write this down. I don't care if you don't like it. I didn't write the rules. You must file for a divorce. Remember what Ms. Don said, no paper in, but paper coming out, okay? You must get a divorce. And that just blows people's minds because in people's minds, they think common law marriage is shacking, okay? Now, I didn't create that statute, but yes, you must file a divorce. And remember, I gave you an example of someone who entered a common law marriage and then the gentleman wanted to go somewhere else. And he did go somewhere else and had a big wedding planned with his new intended, and they couldn't go for. They had a little ceremony and all of that, but that's all. It was just, and then they had that big reception after, and they had a nice big party. But the wife he had established a common law marriage with filed for divorce shortly before. A few weeks before he was going to have that big wedding at that Silk Stocking Church in Washington, D.C. This is a real story. I didn't create that one. That was for real, as the kids say, for real, And, it was brilliant on the common law wife's part, the spouse, because her lawyer served those papers in a timely way. The invitations had gone out and all of that, but the judge found that indeed a marriage had been established. They had 2 children, so she got child support, she got alimony, and he was a doctor, and I think I can't remember what she was, but I think a nurse. But look, this is real. So be careful how you get into certain relationships. And remember, I told you that I advise someone. Sometimes people get into things because it's convenient or it's what they want out of the deal. Okay, it's a selfish motive usually. Let's just get real. Okay, and if you want health benefits or you want certain benefits. No, I know some people say, oh, there she goes, but I'm telling you, this in 40 years I've heard some real ugly stuff. Okay, I've seen some ugly stuff. And it's sad, but people get into things, they have selfish motivations. And then they look up one day and say, I'm just packing my stuff and going. Well, it's not that simple, okay? Yeah, I know you and the person you're leaving probably wants to say, let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. But you know what? You can't do it that way. See, you've held yourself out. So now you have to do things legally. You have to get that divorce. You have to get the divorce. And I remember in this particular case I gave advice to, the gentleman was on the lady's health insurance, on her civil service retirement papers as spouse. And then he's going to sit up there in somebody's face and say, no, I didn't mean it. Well, now, when you went to the doctor, you used that health insurance. Okay, when you had your operation, that health insurance. All right. Now you're going to just move about 2 blocks away in your aunt's house and take up with somebody else. Well, too bad. And here's a man who sent this lady, his common law wife, at least 75 greeting cards, and every one of those cards had wife on it. Beautiful wife, lovely wife, devoted wife, longtime wife, everything had wife on it. Now, and you're going to tell me your intent wasn't to establish a marriage? Okay, let's get real. So he got served with papers, and there you go. And rightly so. Even a judge who didn't want to acknowledge it had to do it because it just was so. Okay, so now be careful how you live. Okay, be careful how you live. And then, as I said, it usually comes up in a probate case. And let me tell you something, those are ugly. And the relatives come out of the woodwork on that and say, well, they weren't really married, they were just living together. Well, no. And then you pull out all these holiday pictures and sentiments, and we have video now, so you can hear what people are saying. Oh, my wife and her family, my mother-in-law, okay, there you go. Roll the tape in the courtroom. Yeah. So, and there you go. That's proof. Okay. What do they say? A picture's worth what? 1,000 words? Well, videotape must be worth 1,000,000. So, that's how you do that. Okay. Now, don't get out here talking about my cousin Boo and all that. No. It's the law. Okay. Now, I don't believe in some of these things, but I have to operate within the framework of the laws that are established. Okay. So I told you about this, and ladies, I don't know why you put yourselves in these positions, and the men too. If you have to get a license to fish in a pond for one day, don't you think you're worth a license for a few years? I just, you can go somewhere fishing, and people know this. You go to a campground fishing, and people say, I'm just going to be here a day, and the people who run that operation say, and you're going to get a one-day license. Now, I think I'm a lot more important than a fish, but I'm just saying. So now that's Miss Don's take on it. So common law marriage. Now, we went over legal separation, something, and this sort of dovetails into what I'm talking about. Legal separation, that's where people live apart sometimes in order to establish a separate time to satisfy filing for divorce, the requirements for filing for divorce. Now, say in the District of Columbia, the separation needs to be 6 months for a voluntary separation, 1 year for an involuntary separation. So sometimes, remember we told you it's helpful to get a legal separation. You reduce it to writing, and you determine, I'm going to get this while we're separated, and that the children will live here, and so forth, and you come to some agreement. Under no circumstances does the court want to hear, we had an understanding, and you tell me, well, we had an understanding. No, writing, okay? Now, I know some of us are in the oral tradition, that African oral tradition. It does not work at the courthouse, okay? We don't have that oral tradition at the courthouse. And you go down there, I feel in my heart. No, this is all business, folks. If it's not on that paper, this is my philosophy. If it's not on paper, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Just go with that, and you'll win every time. What's writing? Text messages, emails. Yeah. I've killed some folks with some text messages. I'm going to tell you. I have my clients print those text messages out. Emails. And email in many courts has the same weight of certified mail. Has the same weight of certified mail. That delivery. You know what I'm saying? You hit send, boom. Okay. And you can even on that say, show me confirmation of delivery on your email. You can do it, right? Okay. So the legal separation. Now, this is very interesting. In the District of Columbia, you can have legal separation under the same roof. You can be under the same roof. Now, this is only in the District of Columbia, okay? Don't try to do it in Maryland. It's not going to work. Or in the Commonwealth. It's not going to work. And now, what does that mean? Separation from bed and board. What does that mean? Well, it means, you know what separation from bed means. Now, come on, I don't have to spell that out. No sex, okay? It means no sex during that period of time. And you're living separate lives. Now, that doesn't mean you're not speaking to each other, and that's kind of ridiculous, under the same roof. Now, where that's helpful is it's hard to maintain two households while you're going through that process. If you can maintain civil discourse and be civil to each other during the separation, during that legal separation, that's great, okay? But you cannot have marital relations. Well, you can't do it. It's not a legitimate separation, okay? So you can have that under the same roof. Now, this is a real story too. Miss Dawn has these stories, and I don't want you to think I'm making these up. This is a real story. And it's happened more than once in the District of Columbia. Now, keep in mind that common law marriage thing. Keep it in the back of your heads. A couple in the District of Columbia had a legal separation. They were separate and apart, under the same roof. They went forward, got a legitimate divorce, okay? They got a divorce. They had they had gone into the marriage, with the license and all of that. This was a papered marriage. And they went into that, and they got their divorce. Okay, now remember I said they had lived under the same roof, okay, and it was voluntary, so they only had to go 6 months, okay, and they satisfied that. And it was real. I mean, there was no doubt about it. Their children said our parents, they testified, our parents lived separate lives. All that was on the record, and they got their divorce. They stayed under the same roof, okay, after the divorce, okay. They stayed under the same roof after the divorce. And I guess, maybe they went down memory lane or something, and they started, I think the husband in particular kept referring to the lady as his wife. And, one thing led to another, when the snow falls and all snowed in and everything. And so they reconnected. And it was determined that they formed a common law marriage. Okay? They held themselves out again. You see what I'm saying? After going through all of that, But they reconnected. They formed, and how that came to everybody's attention, one of them died. And see, here we go. So everybody said, well, yeah, they had gotten back together, and, they referred, it was easy to get the affidavits, and even the children. I mean, the children knew it too. I mean, everybody, they kept having Christmas and Thanksgiving, and all of that. But they had reconnected and had marital relations, and that was that. Yeah. So the law is very clear. And they reconnected and became married again. And they didn't divorce again. So they were. So make up your mind, okay, which way you're going to go. That's kind of funny, and it's kind of sad at the same time, because look, we've had cases where a couple comes to court in the same car for the divorce. Okay, I mean And so we get into, and the judges sort of can sense things. And they said, okay, I notice you're at the same address and whatever. And they said, have you had, and as the attorney, you're supposed to ask, any hope of reconciliation? And you say, no, we don't have any hope of reconciliation. That's one of the questions. If you don't ask it, the judge will. And then they get down to the obvious, okay, but have you had relations? And they see, sometimes people will lie on the stand, there's no doubt about it. I just won't allow it, because, I don't even want to know that they're, But if you tell them that, yes, well, we did slip up once, then the clock has to start over again with regard to your separation. Okay, so if it's voluntary, if it's going to be voluntary, it has to be 6 months, and usually that's the case. So, yeah, okay. So we're all human, and there are certain emotions that come to the surface, and we have to be in control of it. Okay, either that or take a cold shower. That's all I. Okay, now. So that's that. Now, in a divorce situation, the divorce, we have no fault divorce in the District of Columbia. We have no fault divorce in the District of Columbia. That's it. No fault just goes to the divorce, okay? But here's where people get tripped up. While the divorce is no fault, if there has been infidelity or domestic violence or some bad behavior on the part of one of the individuals with respect to property distribution, the court is allowed to take that bad behavior into account. Okay? That is taken into account in terms of your property distribution. Okay, so you can get the divorce, no fault. We don't have to plead, bad behavior. But in property distribution, understand your bad behavior does go to the issue of property distribution, property settlement in a divorce action in the District of Columbia. You should check with your jurisdiction to find out about property distribution. They certainly will take into account your behaviors in these surrounding jurisdictions with respect to the divorce and the property distribution, but you need to really be honest with your attorney about what's going on within what went on within the relationship. The worst thing you can do, folks, is lie to your lawyer or omit telling your lawyer the truth. I have an expression, you can lie to your mom especially, and she's still going to love you, okay? You can lie to God because he already knows you're lying. But do not lie to your lawyer, okay? I mean, now, some people are going to get mad at me about that, but I'm telling you the truth. God already knows you're lying. Your mom is going to, mothers have that unconditional love. But do not lie or withhold truth from your attorney. That's the worst thing you can do. And it does not bode well for you in court. The judges get very angry with that. Okay, so we went over that. And custody, we talked about custody. And I remember saying to you that the court does not make any assumptions or presumptions that mothers automatically get custody. Not these days, okay? I told you that fathers are getting custody now, okay? And that the test is the best interest of the child. What is in the best interest of the child? Which parent does the primary caretaking, okay? And remember now, I said between 71 and 75% of children of color are born to single parents, okay? In the absence, and get this if you don't get anything else, in the absence of a custody order, if there's no order, neither parent has custody, okay? So do not call somebody saying somebody kidnapped a child, because if you don't have anything on paper, what did I just say? If it's not on paper, what? It didn't happen? Okay. This came up as a real issue in that crack epidemic. And let's say one parent overdosed. I had this situation. One parent overdosed, and it was the mother who overdosed. And the father came to the funeral and took the child. okay? And there was nothing they could do about it because why? He was the acknowledged parent. He was the acknowledged parent. Remember we had that paternity discussion? His name was on the birth certificate. Okay, his name was on the birth certificate. So he came right on up in there and took, but he was smart enough to bring a police officer with him. He was not ignorant about the process, okay? And he took his son right on out of that funeral home. So, is it important to get a custody order? Absolutely, absolutely. And some people just worry about getting the money. You know, remember we talked about paternity and support. Paternity and support. And the other prong there is getting a custody order. And remember, we talked about legal custody. Who makes decisions, certain kinds of important decisions? Who has physical custody? And remember, this could even have tax implications for you. You need to really work with your lawyer and your accountant, okay? And your accountant or financial or tax advisor on that matter. And remember now, if you are the putative father, you're holding yourself out as the father, you pay support over a period of time, and then later you discover on or off the Maury show that you're not the father. Question, do you get your money back? Typically, the answer is absolutely not. You are now, you know, in D.C. we have what they call putative father, okay? Now, you're out there and you said, that's my child, that's my child. Or maybe, you know, remember I said, and go back to that episode, I said, don't let your ego get in the way. If you think there's a chance you are not the father, you need to have that paternity. Remember, Miss Gwen and I said, don't sign that birth certificate. This is in, you know, a case where they're not, you're not married to the people, and that's typically the way our children are born these days, okay, to a single parent. Make sure you get that paternity test. I mean, it's not meant to hurt people's feelings or anything, but everybody needs to be sure. You know, I mean, you just need to be sure. It could even come down to a medical situation. You see what I'm saying to you? Knowing your true paternity, okay? It could come down to something that's beyond people's egos, you know, or wanting to be related or whatever. It could be a medical situation. See, remember what I said, how you live comes out in the open in some way, you know, in these kinds of cases, okay? So get that paternity test. But if you go on and you're at that hospital and in the heat of the moment, you're going to say, oh, yeah, put my name on that birth certificate. Okay, easy going on, but trying to get that thing off of there, your name off of there, I'm telling you, okay? And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really hard. You put yourself in a really tough situation. So do you get a big old refund after paying for 10 years? The answer is no. Typically no, okay? And it's very sad, but generally people have an inkling that there's a possibility that someone's not the father. And it's just so much better to be honest about things like that. And it could be so hurtful later in life when people find out things, you know, when you find out that the friend of the family / uncle is your dad for real. And, you know, I mean, it's really, you know, and look, what's going on with our kids out here? You know, so many of them have anger issues because they either don't know who their father is or the father is absent from their lives. You see what I mean? Because we have lived in a certain manner. I know people are going to get angry about what I'm saying. Guess what? I'm going to sleep tonight. When my head hits that pillow, I'm not going to have any problem going to sleep, okay, because I've said the truth. I've been down there too many times. Okay, sometimes I'm so embarrassed I want the floor to open up and swallow me whole because, well, so-and-so could be and so-and-so. No. You know, all this can be established just through some testing, you know, just through testing, okay? And they do it in a discreet way. I don't even know why people go on these television shows 7 times, you know, and wonder, you know, and they think it's funny. that tape is permanent and it's very damaging. It's very traumatic to a child, irrespective of age. I've seen grown ones go on there and just break down, just bawl because they find out something they have been believing for years is not true. We have to stop this. We have to stop this. I'm looking at some of these kids and in the juvenile system, and so many of them have anger issues revolving around just this right here. Don't know who they are. I don't know. My mother won't tell me. That kind of thing. We have to stop that. See, we have to own some of this. Okay? We have to own some of this and wonder why the children are so angry. Now, I'm not excusing their behavior. No. No. We talked about juvenile justice a little bit, and mental health issues. Remember we talked about mental health issues. And, in these divorces, sometimes you have to get mental health checkups because you have to, when you're determining and in custody cases, you have to determine if there's any mental health issue with either parent, either or both parents. I've had the unfortunate situation of dealing with situations where both parents had some issues. Okay, then we have to get a therapeutic model going and determine whether some alternative situation is better, or we can work through this with some family therapy and so forth. Now the District of Columbia Court has parenting classes. And remember I told you, don't you dare miss one, okay? Don't miss one, because then you may get called in there. You could be held in contempt, okay? Because if that's in the order that you're to attend these classes, that's mandatory, okay? You don't get them say, oh, it's raining, I'm not going. No. Go ahead, and then when they call you and want you to come down there, and then no, they don't want to hear it. They do not want to hear that. Well, let's move along here. Okay, we talked about safety in the schools. Well, as parents and guardians, you need to make sure the premises are maintained and safe. And remember, we told you there's a protocol you follow when you go up to the schoolhouse to talk to the teachers, principals, and so forth. You can't just bust in there. You have to go in, honor the protocol, make an appointment to be with your children's teachers, and so forth. And if you have a report that there's no toilet paper, the toilets don't flush and all of that, you have a school board member and a council member who need to be contacted. Excuse me. I forgot to bring my water. So if you find your child's school is not safe, go through the proper protocols. The school board member, the council member. Now remember, all council members are on the education committee in DC. I would just copy all of them. Since they're opting to have a whole committee of the whole thing, then you make it your business to complain to them. Okay? Accountability. Remember, we talked about making them accountable. You voted them in, you can vote them out. Now, the finance piece that we did with Mr. McDuffie. Remember, you can reach him at 202-491-0404. He'll be happy to help you with any of those issues related to finance and credit, getting a mortgage, doing investments in properties, and he has classes. We went over trauma in our community and individual trauma. And remember, we had Dr. Laverne Adams. If you Google her, she'll pop up on several platforms, Dr. Laverne Adams. And go back to that episode where she talked about community trauma. She was also on here concerning going into non-traditional careers for women in Women's History Month. So there are 2 episodes you should go back to. But if you wanted to get in touch with her, Google her, Dr. Laverne Adams, okay? And she will be happy to direct you in where you could get some help, or she may be able to help you. Dr. Alan Tillman, Reverend Dr. Alan Tillman, trauma expert, and Deacon Lewis from Good Success Ministries for Substance Abuse. Go back over that episode. I did get a couple of questions about that. Yes, marijuana is legal in the District of Columbia. There are some very strict rules about it. You smoke on your own premises. You don't get out in the middle of the street. You don't smoke in your car, traveling on 295. You know, or on King Avenue, you know. And I mean, I've been behind some people and I have received a contact high driving in my car. Okay, I'm in my car, mind you. And I said, where is that? What? Lord have mercy. And it's loud. I think they have something called loud or something. Is that right, Miss Yeah, and it's loud. Ooh, good Lord. And, you know, it's all, and I don't want people, it's all in my clothes or whatever, you know. I mean, it's just really awful. So, and people are impaired and driving, see? So we didn't think that through, did we? But, you know, to each his own. If you want to indulge in that, that's fine. But now remember this, rights, okay? And I saw this on a flyer a couple of days ago. They were going to have a big event and tell people their rights as employees. Well, what do we say? With rights come what? Responsibilities. It's R&R. Always think of that. R&R. You have rights as employees. You also have responsibilities, like go every day on time. Don't go impaired. You know, a lady in the community showed up work drunk. Had a big job in the community. And people jumped out there ahead of time. Oh, she was attacked, a black woman. Oh. Then the employer had tape of her reporting to work drunk. Then all those community people, especially the ones who call themselves leaders, had egg on face, okay, because they jumped out there without knowing. Now, some people did, some of us did know, and try to tell them, but, you know, they're smarter than everybody else in the room, so, okay, there's a brick wall, and some people have to hit it. That's the bottom line. Now, you have a right to smoke that marijuana. The employer has a right to terminate you if you're in a position where you have to test clean. Am I getting this over to you? Okay? Now, try being an airline pilot and reporting to work under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And you test positive for that. And you tell them, I live in D.C. and I can smoke. It's legal. Try that, okay? You won't be flying to friendly skies long. Okay, so understand how rights and responsibilities intersect, okay? Understand. And we're going to go into employment type issues. Now, coming up next week, we will start the World Elder Abuse Awareness Month. The whole month of June is World Elder Abuse Awareness Month. World, all over the world, okay? Not just here in America. That's how serious elder abuse is. We'll not only cover abuse, we will cover financial exploitation of the elderly. It is huge. It is huge. We have people in the District of Columbia who live in homes that approach $1 million. Typically, the exploiters are children and grandchildren or relatives. Okay? And it's a brutal conversation. We're going to have it. Okay? Also, during the month of June, we are going to talk about nonprofit law, the do's and don'ts of nonprofit law, setting up a nonprofit, how you dissolve a nonprofit, what are the financial reporting requirements for a nonprofit, how do you get that tax exempt status, and how does that handled, and who is entitled to collect donations under that, okay? And how you have to hold yourself out and be responsible and honest and have integrity in that process. So, I just thought I would hit on some of the questions that people asked. I knew that common law marriage thing and that the paternity thing, and I knew those subjects would be coming up, and I knew the marijuana issue would come up in the child abuse. So I'm really glad that we chose to go into that, and that we will be reviewing trauma again. So I didn't take all the questions from that area because the World Elder Abuse and Awareness Month will go down the mental health and trauma lane once again with the focus on the elderly, but tying it into our community trauma. Okay? Well, thank you so much. And I want to shout out to Just Swag TV. Mercedes, thank you for what you have done and what we're going to continue to do with you. Just Swag TV came up with the logo for Miss Dawn's Justice, and I thank him for it. He's a very creative mind. He's based in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you want to, send me an email, missdonsjustice@gmail.com. missdonsjustice@gmail.com. I'd like to share with you some of the people who make this possible. Shout out to Miss Gwen Lewis, who's helped me tremendously. During the month of June, on June 17th, that's a Saturday, we're going to have an elder abuse symposium at her church, and you'll see more about that, okay? And so don't forget, World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, the whole month of June, the official color is purple, right? The official color is purple. Monroe TV is going to be there with me on that day, or on several dates during June. We're going to really get into that World Elder Abuse Awareness issue. And send me some questions you'd like for me to answer, or some ideas about subjects you want to hear about, okay? I'd like to do that. Just email me, missdonsjustice@gmail.com. All right? Thank you. Have a blessed Memorial Weekend. And with sadness, we note the passing of one of my sheroes, Tina Turner, Miss Tina Turner. And I looked back at one of the episodes we did in the Black History module, the soundtrack of our lives. And she certainly made a huge contribution to the world, to the world of music. And just watching her, I got tired. When she was on stage, I had the privilege of seeing her several times in person, and she was just a force of nature, a force of nature. I'm so glad that she, in the end, had a happy life. She found true love, and if you live right, you'll be blessed. And she was blessed in the end, and just such a lovely, lovely person, humble, all that talent, and still humble. So I'm going to go home today, and I'm going to play some Tina Turner. And in my mind, I'm going to dance with her in my mind. I'm not going to try to do it because I don't have to call an ambulance. They may or may not be able to find me. They have trouble finding me in the district. So. But I'm going to watch her and enjoy myself over the weekend. And I've been invited to a wonderful place on Sunday, and this will be my first Memorial Day without my mom. And but I have happy memories, and so shout out to my family all my friends and family in West Virginia and all over the world, because you are all over the world, literally. And so happy Memorial Day to you, Monroe TV. All right. See you next week.